My fiancée sat me down just weeks before our wedding and told me she wanted to sort out her feelings for her male best friend. She said it casually, like she was asking for a deadline extension on a work project. So I told her I understood. I let her figure it out while I quietly canceled the vendor deposits, packed her things into 2 suitcases, and removed her from my life completely. Before we get into exactly how I dismantled our entire wedding in under 48 hours, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Story Siren. We share stories about recognizing red flags, enforcing absolute boundaries, and the quiet power of walking away. Now, let's get into the details. My name is Jimmy. I am 31 years old, and I work as a procurement analyst for a massive hospital network in Manchester. My job consists mostly of spreadsheets, managing supplier calls, and dealing with people panicking at me because something critical did not arrive when it was supposed to. I am used to high-stress logistics. Because of my job, I keep a very steady personal routine. I leave for work early. I cook most nights. And until about 3 weeks ago, my life was boring in a way I actually really liked. I value stability over drama. My fiancée, well, ex-fiancée, is Lara. She is 29. We had been together a little over 4 years and engaged for 9 months. We were living in my flat because I bought it before we met. But by the time this incident happened, it felt like our place in every practical sense. Most of the wedding had already been paid for in heavy, non-refundable chunks. The expensive, embossed invitations were out. Her custom dress was fitted. Our families had crossed into that annoying phase where every single conversation somehow came back to centerpieces, seating plans, and whether the photographer needed a vegan meal option. Lara had a strong personality, even on her best days. Her friends called her direct. I called her difficult when she was not around. She had a habit of treating every disagreement like a courtroom competition she had to win. If a waiter got an order slightly wrong, she made it into a sweeping speech about customer service. If a friend canceled dinner plans, Lara would act like she had been personally, deeply betrayed. I had seen that dramatic side of her plenty of times, but I honestly thought I knew the size and shape of it by then. I thought I knew how to manage it. Her best friend, Stephen, had been a background feature of our relationship almost from the very start. He was one of those men who somehow managed to be constantly present while pretending not to be a threat. He texted her all the time. He called late at night. He inserted himself into group plans, and he always had some minor crisis or emotional fog that only Lara seemed qualified to handle. I did not like it, but I also did not want to be the insecure, controlling fiancé policing a friendship that technically predated our relationship. I wanted to be the mature guy. The real problem started on a Thursday night. Lara came home unusually calm. Not guilty, calm. Prepared calm. She sat across from me at the kitchen table while I was halfway through sorting final vendor emails for the wedding. Then, she dropped the bomb. She told me she had been feeling confused. She said that getting married was making things feel very real, and that before we went through with it, she needed to sort out her feelings for Stephen. She said it so casually, like she was asking to reschedule a dentist appointment. I remember staring at her because I genuinely thought there had to be a second half to that sentence. I expected her to explain that she had already chosen me and just wanted to be honest about a fleeting thought. Instead, she kept talking. She said she owed it to herself to explore what was there between them, if anything, because she did not want to enter a marriage with regrets. Then she added the part that really changed everything. She told me she expected me to be mature about this, because what she was asking for was not cheating, it was emotional honesty. That was the exact moment I stopped thinking about saving the wedding and started thinking entirely about logistics. What made the whole thing profoundly strange was how reasonable Lara seemed while saying it. She was not yelling. She was not defensive. She was speaking like an HR manager explaining a scheduling conflict. She said she had always had a complicated, lingering connection with Stephen. According to her, the timing had just never lined up when they were younger. He had been dating someone when she was single. Then she was with me when he finally became available. She said getting this close to the wedding forced her to confront the idea that she might be locking herself into one life, while still wondering what that other path looked like. She said it very calmly, almost academically. I asked her one simple question. I asked what exactly sorting out her feelings meant in practical terms. That is where the conversation went from confusing to deeply insulting. Lara leaned back in her chair like this was a business negotiation. She said she needed a little space to spend one-on-one time with Stephen. She wanted to go on a few dates to figure out if there was a real romantic spark there, or if it was just emotional history and nostalgia. She said if it turned out to be nothing, we could move forward with our wedding with complete honesty and certainty between us. She genuinely thought this was a brilliant, mature solution. I asked her if she realized what she was actually proposing. She waved my concern off almost immediately. She said I was being dramatic and framing it the wrong way. According to her, she was being highly responsible by addressing the doubt before the marriage, instead of burying it and letting it turn into resentment 5 years later. Then she said something that stuck with me permanently. She said, "If our relationship is as strong as you believe it is, Jimmy, then a few weeks of me figuring things out shouldn't threaten it." That was when I stopped talking completely. The thing people need to understand about Lara is that she had always been incredibly good at reframing situations, so she came out looking thoughtful instead of selfish. In her mind, she was not asking her fiancé to sit patiently on a shelf while she emotionally test drove another man 3 weeks before their wedding. She was simply engaging in personal growth. Meanwhile, I was sitting there looking at a glowing spreadsheet on my laptop. It held the payment schedule for our venue, the high-end caterer, the photographer, and about 12 other vendors who all expected final, non-refundable confirmations within the next 14 days. I remember thinking something very simple. If she needs time to figure out whether she wants Stephen, then the wedding already has its answer. I did not say that out loud yet, though. Instead, I looked at her, kept my voice perfectly level, and told her I understood. I told her she should absolutely take the time she needed to sort out her feelings. Lara looked visibly relieved. She smiled. She thought I was agreeing to wait for her. She thought she had won the negotiation. Lara seemed highly satisfied after that conversation. She stood up from the table, grabbed her phone, and said she was going to take a long shower because the whole discussion had apparently been emotionally exhausting for her. Meanwhile, I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the vendor spreadsheet. I am not a dramatic person. I do not shout when I am angry, and I do not make big, theatrical emotional speeches. My brain tends to switch straight into problem-solving mode when a system breaks, and that is exactly what happened that night. Lara said she needed time to figure out whether she wanted a future with Stephen. That meant one simple thing to me. The wedding was already over. You do not marry someone who needs to audition a backup option. So, instead of arguing with her through the bathroom door, I opened a new browser tab and started going through the vendor contracts one by one. Venue first, then catering, then the photographer. A few of the initial deposits were strictly non-refundable, which I expected. Others could still be partially recovered if I canceled early enough. I drafted and sent 3 cancellation emails before Lara even turned off the shower water. After that, I closed the laptop and went into the bedroom. Our flat is not very big. It has 1 bedroom, a small living room, and a compact kitchen. Most of Lara's clothes were in the massive wardrobe on the right side of the room, with a second rolling rack she had insisted on buying because my original storage setup was unacceptable for someone planning a wedding. I grabbed 2 empty, large suitcases from the hall closet. Then I started packing her things, not angrily, not violently, just methodically, dresses first, then sweaters, then the endless piles of workout clothes she rarely actually used. I folded everything the exact same way I always did when we traveled together, in neat, tight stacks. Nothing was thrown. Nothing was wrinkled. About 20 minutes later, Lara walked into the bedroom wearing her pajamas, drying her hair with a towel. She stopped dead in the doorway. The first suitcase was already half full, sitting open on the bed. She looked at me, utterly confused, like she had walked into the wrong apartment. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse her of anything. I just kept folding one of her jackets and placing it neatly into the suitcase. Finally, her voice broke the silence. "What are you doing?" I told her the truth. I said, "You told me you need time to explore your feelings for Stephen. That sounds like something a single person should probably do. So I am helping you get started." For a few seconds, she just stared at me. Her brain was trying to process the shift in the timeline. Then her expression shifted rapidly from confusion to deep irritation. Because in Lara's mind, this was not how her plan was supposed to work. Lara crossed her arms almost immediately. She asked me why I was being so dramatic. That was the exact word she used. Dramatic. I kept folding her clothes while she talked. Another sweater. Then a pair of jeans into the suitcase. She said that was not what she meant, and I knew it. According to her, the plan was simply for her to spend some time with Stephen, go on a few dates, and sort through her complex emotions while remaining engaged to me. She said adults should be able to handle complicated feelings without blowing up their entire lives. I told her I agreed with that sentiment. Then I zipped the first suitcase closed, hoisted it off the bed, and pulled the second empty one up to replace it. That is when she started getting genuinely angry. Lara asked if I was seriously packing her things right now. I said yes. She asked where exactly I expected her to go at 9 p.m. on a Thursday. I told her that part was not really my decision to make. She could stay with Stephen. She could stay with a friend. She could stay with her sister Emily. The important part was that if she needed the absolute freedom to explore another romantic relationship, she should probably not be living with the man she was supposed to marry in 3 weeks. She rolled her eyes heavily, like I was missing the point on purpose to punish her. Then she said something that honestly explained a lot about how she had been viewing the situation, and me, for a long time. She said I was supposed to trust her. According to Lara, sorting out her feelings did not mean she was officially choosing Stephen over me. It just meant she needed the opportunity to see whether there was a spark there before committing fully to our marriage. She said I should be confident enough in our relationship to handle a temporary test. That was the moment I stopped packing and looked directly at her. I told her that trust does not mean accepting blatant humiliation. If someone needs to actively evaluate another romantic option before marrying you, the decision is already made, whether they admit it to themselves or not. She tried to interrupt, to reframe the argument again, but I kept speaking calmly. I said she was absolutely free to explore her feelings for Stephen. I was not going to argue with her, police her phone, or give her an ultimatum. But she was going to do it as a single woman, not as my fiancée, and certainly not living in my home while I paid the wedding vendors. Then I finished packing the second suitcase. I walked into the hallway, grabbed the 2 heavy bags, her laptop bag, and the small decorative box where she kept her everyday jewelry. I placed everything neatly by the front door and I opened it. Lara stood there, staring at me like she was still waiting for me to back down. Like this was a game of chicken, and I was supposed to swerve. I told her she should probably call Stephen to pick her up. Then I stepped aside and told her it was time to go. Lara did not move at first. She stood in the hallway looking at the bags like they were some kind of temporary art display. Like this was still part of the argument phase, and eventually I would cool down, apologize for overreacting, and put everything back in the wardrobe. Then she started talking again, faster this time. She said I was overreacting. She said I was being deeply insecure. She said this was exactly why people avoided honest conversations in relationships, because partners like me could not handle emotional complexity. I listened to the first 30 seconds of that speech while standing near the open door. Then I calmly told her the conversation was already finished. Lara kept pushing, though. She said I was punishing her for being honest. She said I was trying to manipulate her into choosing me quickly out of fear. According to her, a mature partner would support her while she figured out her feelings, instead of turning the situation into an aggressive ultimatum. I told her there was no ultimatum. An ultimatum implies she has a choice to make to save the relationship. I told her she already made the choice the moment she asked for permission to date another man before our wedding. I simply adjusted my logistical plans based on that new information. That is when the irritation on her face turned into something much closer to raw anger. She said I was unbelievable. She said most men would at least try to fight for their relationship. Apparently, my total refusal to beg her to stay was proof that I never loved her the way she thought I did. That part almost made me laugh, but I kept my voice perfectly calm. I told her she was absolutely free to figure out whatever she needed with Stephen. I was not stopping her. I was just removing myself from the equation entirely. Then I pointed to the suitcases by the open door. For a few seconds, she just stared at them. The reality of the situation seemed to finally land. This wasn't a debate. I wasn't negotiating. Without saying another word, she grabbed her laptop bag first, then one of the suitcases. She dragged it toward the hallway with an irritated, aggressive pull that made the wheels bounce loudly over the door frame. She turned back once and asked, "Are you seriously ending everything like this?" I told her yes. She rolled her eyes, muttered something under her breath about me being insanely dramatic, grabbed the second suitcase, and walked out of the apartment. The door closed behind her a few seconds later, and just like that, the flat was completely quiet. The first thing I did after Lara walked out was sit down on the couch and open my phone. Not to text her, not to argue, not to wait for some emotional follow-up message where she tried to renegotiate the terms of her departure. I blocked her phone number first, then WhatsApp, then Instagram, then Facebook, every single platform where a message could appear and start another round of pointless, exhausting discussion. It was not an emotional decision made in anger. It was preventative maintenance. Lara had a well-documented habit of talking in circles until people got tired enough to just give in. I had watched her do it with friends, coworkers, even her own sister. Once she believed she was entitled to something, the conversation never actually ended until the other person surrendered out of sheer fatigue. I had absolutely no interest in participating in that process. After my phone was locked down, I opened my laptop again and went back to the vendor list. The venue manager had replied first. I explained that the wedding was canceled due to a personal situation and asked what percentage of the deposit could be recovered. The answer was not great, but it was legally predictable. Some money was gone forever, but some was partially refundable if they could rebook the date. The caterer was easier to deal with, same with the florist. I worked through the spreadsheet for about an hour. The strange thing was how incredibly calm everything felt. No shouting matches, no dramatic, tearful breakup speeches, just emails, cancellation PDF forms, and a quiet apartment that suddenly had half the closet space available again. At some point, I noticed something else. My phone was completely silent. That was highly unusual because Lara normally sent messages constantly throughout the evening. Even when we were both at work, she would send updates about random things that annoyed her. Coworker problems, traffic complaints, screenshots of petty arguments happening in her group chats. Now, there was nothing. Of course, I had already blocked her everywhere. So even if she had tried to message me, I would not see it. But I realized something important. If Lara had actually expected me to wait patiently while she explored her feelings for Stephen, she probably also expected to come back later that night or the next day and continue the relationship like nothing had happened. Blocking her removed that option entirely, which meant that sooner or later she was going to realize I was not playing along with the version of events she had scripted in her head. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Part of that was habit from work, but part of it was the strange, peaceful quiet in the apartment. Lara used to start moving around early, usually complaining about something before she even finished her first cup of coffee. A neighbor making noise, an annoying email from her boss. Now the place was completely silent. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. There were already 2 replies from vendors confirming the cancellations. One asked if I wanted to move the deposit toward a future event. I declined that option immediately. There would not be a future event. Around mid-morning, my phone buzzed with a call from a number I did not recognize. I ignored it. 30 seconds later, the exact same number called again. Then a third time. That was when I realized what was probably happening. Lara could not reach me directly anymore, so she was trying to call from someone else's phone. I declined the call again and blocked the number. About 5 minutes later, another unknown number appeared on the screen. I blocked that one, too. Lara had always been relentless when she wanted a conversation to continue on her terms. If anything, blocking her main accounts probably just made her furiously determined to get a reaction out of me. By the time I left for work, I had blocked 3 different, unknown phone numbers. At lunch, I checked my personal email and saw something new. It wasn't from Lara, it was from Steven. The subject line simply said, "We should talk." I almost laughed out loud in the break room when I saw it. Apparently, Lara had already updated him on the situation. Either that, or he had been actively involved in the background much longer than I realized. Both options were highly possible. I opened the email. It was surprisingly polite, but dripping with condescension. Steven said he thought there had been a massive misunderstanding, and that Lara was extremely upset about how things had escalated. He wrote that the situation between him and Lara was complicated, but not what it looked like. Then, he suggested the 3 of us meet for a pint to clear the air like adults. I read the message twice to make sure I wasn't missing a punchline. Then I closed the email without replying, because from my perspective, there was absolutely nothing left to clear up. I wasn't going to sit at a pub and let another man explain my own relationship to me. The attempts to reach me did not stop there. That evening, another email arrived. This time it was from Lara's older sister, Emily. Her message was much shorter. She wrote that Lara was staying on her couch and that things had gotten out of control very quickly. According to Emily, Lara was convinced I had completely overreacted and destroyed the relationship instead of having a real conversation. Emily said Lara desperately wanted to meet and talk things through. I read that message twice as well. What stood out to me was not the request to talk. It was the way Lara was describing the situation to her family. Apparently, in her heavily edited version of events, she had simply tried to be emotionally honest about some complicated pre-wedding jitters, and I had immediately exploded, thrown her out on the street, and canceled the entire wedding in a fit of toxic insecurity. The part where she explicitly asked her fiancé for permission to explore a romantic relationship with another man 3 weeks before the wedding seemed to be completely missing from that summary. I did not reply to Emily either. Instead, I finished eating dinner and started going through the apartment room by room. Not because I was angry, mostly because the place suddenly felt half empty and slightly disorganized after everything from Lara's side of the closet and bathroom disappeared. There were still small things left behind. A hairbrush in the bathroom drawer, a pair of running shoes by the door she must have forgotten in the rush, some expensive, random cosmetics in the cabinet under the sink. I gathered everything into a small cardboard box and placed it near the entrance. If she wanted those things back, she could arrange a time to collect them through Emily or someone else. I was not interested in another direct conversation. Around 10 p.m. that night, my phone buzzed again, another unknown number. This time I answered, mostly out of sheer curiosity. For a second there was silence on the line. Then Lara's voice came through. She sounded irritated more than anything else. The first thing she said was that blocking her everywhere was childish. The second thing she said was that we needed to talk because things had gotten completely out of hand and my behavior was embarrassing her. For a second, I did not say anything. Then I asked her how many phones she planned to borrow from her friends before realizing the situation had not changed. Lara immediately sounded annoyed. She said that attitude right there was exactly the problem. According to her, I had taken a normal conversation about complicated human feelings and turned it into a nuclear-level reaction. She said I humiliated her by throwing her out of the apartment like she was some kind of criminal. I told her she asked for the absolute freedom to explore another relationship. I simply made her living logistics match her request. That made her even more irritated. Lara said I was twisting her words. She claimed she never explicitly said she wanted to start a relationship with Steven. She just needed time to understand what she felt. Apparently, in her mind, that semantic distinction made everything completely reasonable. Then she said something that honestly explained why she was calling so late. Steven had told her about the email he sent me. She said the three of us sitting down and talking like adults would clear up the misunderstanding and calm everything down. According to her, once I realized nothing physical had actually happened between her and Steven yet, I would see that canceling the wedding was a massive overreaction. I told her something very simple. If someone needs to actively evaluate another man before marrying me, then the engagement is already finished. There is no version of this reality where the wedding continues as planned. She started talking over me immediately after that, saying I was being stubborn, prideful, and that I was refusing to even try to fix things. I did not respond. I hung up the phone. Then I blocked that number too. After that call, the situation finally went permanently quiet. No more unknown numbers, no more emails, no more messages through other people trying to set up a mediation session. Either Lara realized I was not going to keep participating in the discussion, or she simply ran out of phones to borrow. The next few days were mostly administrative. I finished canceling the last of the wedding arrangements. The venue confirmed the date had already been relisted by another couple, which meant I would recover a small part of the deposit. The photographer kept the booking fee, which was fair according to the contract. The caterer refunded more than I expected. It was not cheap, but it was manageable. The stranger part was telling people the wedding was off. My parents took the news incredibly calmly. My mother asked the obvious question about what happened, so I explained it in very simple terms. Lara wanted to explore her feelings for another man before the wedding. I chose not to participate in that situation. That explanation seemed to be enough for them. Some mutual friends reached out over the next week. A few had clearly heard Lara's version first, which framed the situation as me abruptly ending everything after one difficult conversation. Whenever someone asked, I told them the exact same thing I told my parents. If your partner needs to test drive another relationship before marrying you, the answer is already there. Most people understood immediately. The ones who didn't weren't worth arguing with. About 2 weeks later, Emily came by the apartment to collect the last small box of Lara's things. We spoke for maybe 3 minutes in the hallway. She did not argue with me or try to defend her sister. She just sighed and said the situation had become very messy on their side. Apparently, things between Lara and Steven were already complicated, and the fantasy wasn't matching the reality. That did not surprise me in the slightest. When a relationship is built on sneaking around and emotional infidelity, the thrill usually dies the second it becomes public and real. After Emily left, I closed the door and went back inside. The apartment felt different now. Quieter, simpler. Not empty exactly, just stable again. Sometimes people ask if I regret not trying harder to fix things, if I should have gone to counseling or waited to see if she chose me. The honest answer is absolutely not. Lara said she needed time to figure out whether another man might be the better choice for her future. I simply made sure she had all the time in the world to do exactly that. just not as my fiancé. If this story resonated with you, if you appreciate logic over emotion and the power of walking away from disrespect, hit the like button. It helps the channel, and it helps this message reach people who might be tolerating behavior they shouldn't. Leave a comment below. Would you have canceled the wedding immediately or waited to hear her out? Subscribe to Story Siren for more stories about resilience, boundaries, and taking your life back. Until next time, protect your peace.